The purpose of this video is to show you how to take an ETSCAT design that you have created in Jet 10 and have used the automated file converter to convert into a SolidWorks file, and take that CAD model of your design and modify it so you can add it to the predefined Common Core, ETSCAT Common Core that everyone is using this semester. So we'll show you how to cut away all the fuselage from Jet 10 and save only the aeroshell part, and then add that aeroshell to the predefined ETSCAT core. So we'll start by grabbing that file that the automatic file converter created. So we'll go down in the place where the file converter said it saved the data, in curve data model, and we'll get the step file. And the reason we use the step file is then our own preferences are maintained when we use SolidWorks. If we use the solid part file, then we would be stuck with the defaults that the person who made the software is using. We don't need to run import diagnostics, we do not need to do feature recognition, but we do want to turn on the black lines so we can better see the model that we're working with. So this is our model. In other videos we took this model and converted it into a wind tunnel model, but in this video we're going to cut away all that fuselage and add it to a predefined fuselage. So first we need to open up the file for that predefined fuselage, and where that is on the K drive, DFD fan, AE481, in Blackboard Backup CAD, and there's the ETSCAT CAD model, and that's the one we want. And so in that ETSCAT CAD model there's the ETSCAT New Core 2020 with inlets and bays. That's the one we want. We'll open that thing up, and you can see it's got a lot more detail to it. No feature recognition. Got a lot more detail to it than the one that's automatically generated by the file converter. That's because Jet doesn't support this kind of detail, and we have to add this detail in a CAD program. Alright, so this is the fuselage, the common fuselage that we're going to add our aerodynamic surfaces to, and this was created from a automatically generated file, and the aero surfaces from that automatically generated file were cut away. So if we can, and that was the very first thing that was done. So if we look over here in the list, the very first cut, that sketch right there, was used to cut away all the aero surfaces, high mounted wing and tails and that sort of thing. So we're going to use that sketch to cut away the other part. We're going to modify the sketch, but we're going to use that sketch so everything is consistent. So we're going to copy it, and we have it highlighted in the list. We're going to hit Control-C on the keyboard, and then we're windowing over to our jet model that we opened up. Highlight the right plane, Control-V, paste that sketch in there. Take a front view, which is a side view in SolidWorks, and we see what was cut away. Maybe that model was a little different from this one because all of that was cut away. But it doesn't matter. We're going to modify this sketch. Right click, edit the sketch, We're going to take this side and drag it down there because we're going to cut away the other half. So that's what we want to do. Hit the checkbox, exit sketch, highlight the sketch, extruded cut. And this one's still in millimeters, but it doesn't matter for us. A lot of millimeters. Go the other way and cut away all of that airplane that's not the aeroshell. Hit the checkbox. Say, yeah, I like that. And we'll go File, Save As. And I'm going to save it as the auto model. There's another aeroshell defined in there that is there for your reference in that same folder on the K drive. So we're going to give this a different name, and we'll do with it what they did with that. So we'll save it as the auto model. I already did this once, so there was already something there with that name. You can save it however, whatever name you want. This is the file now that we want to add to the assembly. So let's open the assembly that has everything put together. Before we open the core, now we're going to open the assembly. So let's open the assembly. And the assembly is a bunch of parts put together. You can see there's landing gear, there's missiles in the missile bays, landing gear retracted and extended. It's all very realistic looking because we've added details which were not there in the original jet model. Now, as I say, this is the aeroshell that was in the assembly. We're going to add our own aeroshell. So we do Insert Components, and it shows us a list of everything that's open. Here's our auto model. We click on that, and there it is. We're going to put it in there. Okay, I drug it over and I clicked for the time being, so it's in there. Now I'm going to delete the other one. I click on it in the list and just hit the delete key. And now I have my aeroshell instead of that one that was in there. Okay, obviously this view's not telling the whole story. Let's get a front view. Right on. Let's bring this down on top of the other one. We can zoom in on that to make sure we have everything lined up just right. But remember, we're only looking at it from the front view, so we can line up the front view nicely. And if it's still not quite as good as I want, I can zoom in even more. Make it very easy to line everything up very perfectly. Right there. Right there. Okay. Now let's look at the top view, which is a front view in SolidWorks. Oops. So, how do we get those two lined up properly? Well, it turns out, again, the common core was defined in an auto-converted file, from an auto-converted file. So the ends of the fuselage should be the same. So we'll take those ends and line them up right like that. And we can get right left here, but we're going to get right left from the front as well. So we'll line them up this way. Zooming in, get a perfect lineup of the rear fuselage. And those are consistent files. They're made from the same core defined in JET. So that'll put the aeroshell in the right position. Then one more check of the front view. And we'll zoom way in, and because this is a perfect front view, we won't be adjusting fore aft at all. Let's get a nice tight fit of the front view. and zoom out. Now let's take another look at the bottom view. Make sure everything's lined up there. They are. And there we have our aeroshell now attached to the common core. And you can use this, you can take pictures by hitting print screen, put them in your reports and your slideshows. We could 3D print this model and have a nice display model. And so that's one thing you do with your aeroshell once you get it optimized. Alright, so I'm going to save this under a different name. Rebuild. I'm going to save it ETSCAT Demo Assembly. And I'm going to leave it right in there in the same folder. None of the other files show because that's the only assembly file in that ETSCAT CAD model folder. So, okay, I'm going to save it as the demo assembly. And then the other thing I want to do is make a wind tunnel model with that well-defined core. So I'm going to X out of this assembly, and I'm going to take my aeroshell that I've defined and scale it down to 1/48 scale, because I already have made a 1/48 scale wind tunnel model from the common core. And of course that one won't have the bays cut into it and things. It'll be all with all the doors closed essentially, and that'll make a good wind tunnel model. So here we go. I want to insert reference geometry. Well, first off, yeah, we already saved it. Insert reference geometry. That's not right. Insert features scale. And my scale is going to be about the origin. Uniform scaling 1/48, so 1/48 scale. And then I highlight, just put a box around everything I want to scale, and then I hit the checkbox. Alright, so top view, there we go. There's a 1/48 scale aeroshell for the wind tunnel model. I'll go File, Save As. So Auto Model. I'll put it in the wind tunnel folder where that wind tunnel core is. I'm going to call it Auto Wind Tunnel Model. Put a underscore for a space in there, like that. Okay. So I've given it a new name, and the other assembly was not open, so if it was, then the assembly would be asking, should we track to this, should we link to this new name or keep the old name or whatever. But since the other assembly is not open, I'm not affecting it at all. It's still using that other version of the file that I saved before I scaled it down. So now that we have created our aeroshell and taken away the other parts of the automatically generated configuration, and we scaled that aeroshell down to 1/48 scale, we want to add it to a 1/48 scale core that has been set up for the wind tunnel. So we open that file. It's in the CAD. Before we were in this ETSCAT CAD model folder, now we're in the wind tunnel model folder, and it's the wind tunnel core. And so now we have that. We don't need to do feature recognition. Now we're going to create a new, let's make sure we don't have any assemblies open. We're going to create a new assembly Okay, assembly, okay. And we're going to use the core as the first part in the assembly. Now we insert components. That'll give us a list of everything we have open. We want the auto wind tunnel, and there it is, more or less, yeah, out in the right place. The auto wind tunnel aeroshell. It's not lined up perfectly, so we can look at a front view and put this exactly perfectly on top of that. And it's not lined up longitudinally. We'll take a bottom view of the aircraft and we'll shift that back so that lines up just right longitudinally. Okay, one more front view to make sure everything lines up nice. There we go. And even better, we can zoom in as much as we want. It's infinitely zoomable to make everything lined up perfectly. And maybe that's a little off. And there we go. So now we have our wind tunnel model. We may still need to do a little processing. We certainly have to drill a hole. And those processes are just the same way they were as shown in one of the other videos about making wind tunnel models from your automatically defined geometry, automatically converted geometry into a CAD file. So you'd do the same things here. You'd save this assembly as a step file and then open that up and put the other wind tunnel features into it. This is also how you define a display model that didn't have bays open and that sort of thing. That could be a hanging model or a stand model that doesn't have landing gear and that sort of thing.